what's up? Welcome into the CHGO Bears Podcast presented by PointsBet. Use code CHGO to earn up to two bets, up to $2,000. How's everyone doing? Adam Hoge, Nicholas Moreano, Will DeWitt in the bubble. Got the whole crew back together today as we rank the defense today. Yesterday we did the offense. We ranked our top 10 offensive players on the Bears roster. It was not easy. It was hard to come up with 10, and then we said it would be easier for the defense, and then this morning I went to go do it, and it was harder than I thought.
Okay, it was definitely easier than yesterday's exercise with the offense. Towards the back end, I think it'll get interesting again with our list, but definitely easier than ranking the offensive players for sure.
I think, Adam, you said it right. Like, there are more names that you recognize and you know, but figuring out exactly how they fall was a challenge, and it took an extra cup of coffee to really get into the zone and figure out how they land, but I think my list is perfect, and we'll get there soon.
Perfect. The perfect list. All right.
No.
But before we get into that, we actually have some news to break down, as well as our last player to talk about in the Hoge grade segment. But the Bears made a trade yesterday after we got done with our show. N'Keal Harry is a Bear. I should have actually looked up somebody sent me a DM back in April. I got to look this up so I make sure I get the guy's name right, because he deserves a shout out for this. Okay, Joe Bosco. All right, now this is a good lesson that you shouldn't do DMs. You should put this out there on Twitter, because then you would have looked like a genius to everybody. But I'm still going to give you respect. John Bosco sent me a message on Wednesday, April 6th, that I'll be honest, I missed, did not see it until he followed up again yesterday. But it's a long message, but it's basically, what are your thoughts on the Bears taking a cheap flyer on a guy like N'Keal Harry? There is no doubt he has failed in New England, especially as a first-round pick. But with them bringing Parker in, he looks to be in his way out. Big 6'4", still young, high investment as a first-round pick. Seems like the perfect low-risk flyer for Poles to take, especially since the Bears didn't have the cap interest in taking a swing at some of the big available wide receivers. Thus far, it would be cheap enough to not impact drafting a wide receiver in the draft as well. Remember, that was sent before the draft. So, shout out to him. Great call. Perfect logic. It did not cost basically anything, a 7th-round pick in 2024. And to your point, yeah, I mean, like.
What else does he know?
Like, I know, right? It's pretty good. What else you got up your sleeve? But, yeah, so anyway, he followed up yesterday, and I gave him his due. But, yeah, put that out there in the Twitter sphere. Then we could have retweeted it with the date and been like, hey, this guy's a genius.
See into the future. But, the news, the 8th newest wide receiver this offseason that the Bears have added. And, honestly, it's a move like he was saying. It's low risk, potentially high reward, given that he is a former first-round draft pick. But the thing he has that a lot of these Bears wide receivers don't have is size. Outside of Equanimeous St. Brown, who is taller, he's the heaviest wide receiver on this Bears roster. So maybe he can use that to his advantage, but he's not someone that's going to give you any special teams value. If he's going to make this roster, it is going to be as a wide receiver, but it's a move that, hey, the Bears, Ryan Poles wanted to go with quantity, not quality at the wide receiver position. He's definitely doing that by adding a guy like this.
And there is potential quality here in Harry. We'll have to see exactly what he
we go.
Bring to the table here. What's up?
I said, here we go. Tell us how N'Keal Harry is going to suddenly become a really good NFL player. I'd love to hear this.
I don't have that right now, Adam. However, I can see fits. Nick hit it, the bigger body guy, something the Bears don't already have, and he has decent speed, but he's not going to be a burner by any means. He's someone who can use that body size, leverage, strong hands. I saw a few of those tweets that people were circulating yesterday about his run blocking grade and for PFF, and I think that's something that the Bears have really wanted to bring in. He can be, with that bigger body too, he can come inside, maybe crack a linebacker, helping some of those additional running lanes in this zone scheme. However, as we know, he didn't really do too much in New England. But when you look at what New England did over the last few years too, it hasn't been pretty. His 2 touchdowns in 2020 did lead the team. They only had 12 passing touchdowns that entire season. Newton had 8. 2 of those touchdowns came from a receiver. I think Jacoby Myers threw 2 touchdowns that season. So it was just a weird situation for him to be in. And so the Bears have a possession guy now. And I think having a possession guy is needed. And I don't know. One thing I wanted to say was I was excited that Poles did a move that kind of had all of our juices flowing last night. Nick wrote an article, spur of the moment. I was helping him with some editing and getting it in there as I was cooking dinner. And we haven't had anything like that in some time to have a little frenzy. And I thought that was exciting. And maybe, Mac Jones came to town and Harry was like, oh, man, I was really hoping for Justin Fields. So they phased him out of the offense. Ryan Poles heard it through the grapevine, and here he is. But like you said, second chance, which I'm a big fan of second chances, a lot of upside potential, minimal risk. All in all, pretty happy guy over here myself with seeing this move kind of pan out.
Yeah, I think there's way more examples, though, of players maybe getting a second chance in New England and then being more productive there than the opposite. Especially, you talk about the one position group that this franchise usually does the opposite to, right? This is the place that the wide receivers come to die, right? That's not where they come to be born. And I think, look, I'm not trying to kill the kid. Totally understand the move. I think it was a great move. Honestly, I think a phenomenal move for a 7th-round pick that's a year away for a guy that is a big target who can at very least probably get some reps out there and block in this outside zone running scheme. It's a great point. Same thing with Byron Pringle. I think those are 2 guys that fit, this offense in that regard. But
it's an uphill battle, Adam. It is.
I mean, I don't even think it's a given he makes the team.
No,
right.
It's not. All those other wide receivers they brought in on 1-year deals, Dante Pettis, Tajay Sharp, Equanimeous St. Brown, they're all thinking the same thing. Like, hey, we're all competing for these limited spots. Yes, there's open competition, but outside of Darnell Mooney, all those guys are competing to make a good impression on the Bears coaching staff. So it's not a given, but he just, like we were saying, he does have the physical attributes that are different from some of the other guys. But outside of that, he couldn't get it done in New England. Let's see what happens, again, with the Bears, where usually success doesn't happen at that position.
Poles is throwing darts at this point, right?
Yeah.
He's throwing a bunch of them at the wide receiver, and he's hoping he hits a bullseye, right? And
I'm glad they
maybe
made this move.
Maybe it's a triple 20 with one of them.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I was watching the episode of Ted Lasso where he fakes, I don't know if any spoilers. That was a great scene. Where he's throwing right hand. He's like, oh, I'm lefty. But the thing is, I do like that they made this move before training camp, so they do get that time where this is a crucial time to develop that chemistry, and you get all these reps, and you're in pads. And if there is it's like an even slate for everybody. Even though the other guys had the OTAs and stuff, he can get an opportunity, Harry, to see what he can do with Justin Fields and the Bears offense.
Yeah, and he was a red zone threat in New England his first 2 years. Second best receiver in 2019 in the red zone for them. 2020 was the most productive receiver in the red zone. So using that size, coming away with some scores, that's something that the Bears right now, with the lack of size, outside of St. Brown, who's really never been, though, a red zone threat, there's potential value there as well. But like you said, a lot to prove here in Chicago, and time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the process. I think this is another example of you like the process of what Ryan Poles did here. Doesn't mean the results are going to be. Same thing with the draft class. By the way, I have a Q&A out on allchgo.com today. We hit on a bunch of stuff, which I wanted to do. It's like a summer edition.
Yeah.
So we got plenty of Bear stuff. But that was one of the things that came up is no one knows if this draft class is going to work out. The question was about how Ryan Poles hasn't had a lot of wins, if any, so far. True. And I took exception to the one thing, which was I liked his draft. I don't know that the players are going to work out. Have no idea. We need 3 years to figure that out. But I liked the process, right? I liked how he stuck to the board, found plug-and-play contributors, and then added a ton of draft capital on day 3. More times than not, that strategy is going to produce some players. So I think that was an example of a win. And then, yes, there's a couple of other things, many other things, actually, that I think are worth monitoring and questioning. That was just one of the things that came up. Also that came up in there, tavern-style Chicago pizza. we got into a discussion about, best and worst road trips in the NFL.
Nice.
Maybe the most random one was best spots to go to in Minneapolis, besides Manny's.
Okay.
I'm not going to give these away. I mean, you got to go to allchgo.com. Our members can check out the Q&A.
Got to get that
A lot
insight.
of good stuff. And then Mark Carman asked me, as he weighed in, Cam Ellis asked me about the situation in England right now. Which
I saw that.
Yeah, he's classic Cam. It was a funny question, but I did not address that. Mark Carman, though, asked me who's my favorite Bull of all time, not named Michael Jordan.
Ooh.
That one I'm willing to answer right here. It's Derrick Rose by far. I've never been more excited about any draft pick in Chicago sports than Derrick Rose, and it still causes me legitimate pain, like physical pain. I feel it when I think about, and maybe it's my own knee injury, but when I think about his knee derailing what should have been just like a runaway Hall of Fame career.
Whenever I see like the Twitter videos where they say, his highlights from 2011, like I always watch.
Oh.
I always watch. I'm like, I know the plays, I know when they happen, but I just have to rewatch it again.
Well, you need to be reminded kind of how.
That too.
Because it didn't last long enough.
No.
You know, like everyone's going to remember in their head like Steph Curry's threes forever because he's been doing it over and over and over and over again. Derrick Rose had like it truncated in 2 seasons where he's got some of the greatest highlights.
Where he takes LeBron and Wade up to the rim on the double reverse. I'm like, I love that. I love that. And every time it comes up, I watch it every time.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah, that documentary too that came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Watched it a few
That was
times.
good.
And that it's that's like punishment for the emotions watching that again.
All right, let's before we get to the draft, we need to talk about our final Bears defensive player, and unless you. Well, I don't know. Everybody should know who this is by now, I would think. But it is Roquan Smith, the top player on the entire roster last year. The only one to go into the 5 category, getting over the number 5, which I'd have to look back. That is one of the highest, if not the highest. I think Khalil Mack might have been higher than that in 18. But we're talking about, to me, one of the most underrated players still in the league. That's how good I think he is. But he was at 508 last season. You look at what he did, 163 tackles, 3 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. That's something that sort of gets overlooked, just how much he gets in the backfield and makes plays too. Like that TFL number's been high throughout his career. And he always his first play was a sack.
Yeah.
Remember that? In 18 against the Packers at Lambeau Field. Earned second-team All-Pro honors for the second year in a row. Hasn't missed a game since 2019. He's been durable. He's been reliable. And, of course, he is going into this season on that rookie fifth-year option. Whether or not the Bears will re-sign him, you think they would. You think that would be coming because he should certainly factor into the long-term plans with the Bears. So, no surprise, but Roquan Smith is the top player on the board this year.
Yeah, and I you could just watch the Cincinnati game, and yes, that's where you guys picked 6, but everything else he did in that game, whether it's from a tackling standpoint, being in coverage, there's a play where he's on the outside, lined up opposite of the running back, Jaylon Johnson, the slot, and they run like a pick concept, and it's just a communication on the play on a 3rd down where Joe Burrow ends up making an incomplete pass, but it's because Roquan and Jaylon Johnson are communicating. And that's the kind of guy you get with Roquan Smith, always being at the right spot, knowing what the play is, and that's why he's able to get in the backfield, those 12 tackles for loss. So such an instinctive sideline-to-sideline linebacker that the Bears are fortunate to have. I'm sure Matt Eberflus is happy to have, especially given that he had Darius Leonard in Indianapolis. So, yeah, it makes sense. Blue chip, 5, and, maybe a contract will be on the way here.
It better be. Ryan Poles has been saving money for something. He didn't spend a lot of money this year for a reason, and I think Roquan Smith would be, a great use of some of that additional capital that the Bears are going to have in the future. Adam, I love that you mentioned his tackles for loss. That's such an underrated element of his game, being in the backfield, making plays. And he was sent on a decent amount of blitzes last year, and the Colts did the same thing with their linebackers. So he's still going to be a factor coming after quarterbacks, crashing those, shooting those gaps, making plays in the backfield. And an element of his game that I really appreciate, and I've always have, is his coverage ability. I know the graphic had that pick six that he had on Joe Burrow, which put a smile on my face. And it wasn't an easy start to the season. Weeks 1 through 6, he gave up 200 passing yards in coverage, but the final 10 games, only 143 yards surrendered in coverage. And having a linebacker in the middle of the field that just takes it away, he's not going to be mismatched with a running back or a tight end. He can handle it all. That's what I love about Roquan Smith, and I'm glad that Adam saw it with his grade, giving him over a 5.
Yeah, so I think we all know who's going to be number one across the board as we get to our top 10 Bears players on defense. But before we get there, I need to tell you that the best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up, and if you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. That's not it, because if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you will receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content like that Q&A I was just talking about and all those mailbag questions. You can also read Nick's breakdown of the N'Keal Harry trade, which I think we have unlocked to everybody, but unlocked. Also obviously included with that CHGO membership. And you even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. Been seeing a lot of these around the office now. The shirts with the Chicago skyline, they are awesome. And so, again, that's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, a free T-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making a $50 or more first-time deposit at PointsBet. Any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com. We'll help you out. If you happen to see an edge in the game you're watching, or if your favorite team is primed for a comeback, well, you don't just have to watch the game. You can bet along with it live. PointsBet has more live betting, more live markets, and faster live cash outs. All you got to do is download the PointsBet app right now. Use the promo code CHGO. You'll get everything that we've been mentioning here every day for you. And once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. If you're someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services.
All right, Chicago sports fans, your home for the best Chicago sports coverage is partnering with a leader in sports merchandise and collectibles. Who could this be? CHGO has teamed up with FOCO to secure your access to the best collectibles and gear around. Whether it's the Bears, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Bulls, FOCO will have something for you, your friend, a friend, or a loved one. So everybody gets in on this. Looking to get some new gear, collectibles, or accessories? FOCO has officially licensed gear for men, women, and kids, with everything from bobbleheads, which we have plenty of here at the CHGO studio, to swimsuits. Hey, if you like Crocs, they got them too. FOCO has got you covered with the best Chicago merchandise of your favorite team. Head over to FOCO.com or click the link below in our YouTube description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code CHGO for 10% off.
All right. It is time. We had a lot of fun with this yesterday. If you missed the show, go back and check it out on the podcast or on YouTube. It's all there for you. We ranked the top 10 offensive players on the Bears roster. It was not easy, but it was fun to do, and it led to some good discussion. So we decided, all right, we bring Will back today. Let's do it with the defense. Run it back. And as we mentioned, talking about Roquan Smith, I think I can speak for all of us here. Unless, something shocking is happening that I don't know about. Maybe Will is putting N'Keal Harry number 1 on defense. This should be Roquan Smith across the board. And that's certainly where I went for all the reasons that I've already mentioned.
I won't repeat anything you just said because I have the exact same player as number 1. Roquan's, it's unanimous across the board. Clean sweep, Roquan Smith, not unless Will, like you said, Adam has something up his sleeve.
No reason to get cute here, guys. Roquan Smith is the guy. Without Khalil Mack, no Akeem Hicks, this is a season for him to take another step as the leader of the defense, and I expect him to do so. Number 1 guy for sure.
So the fun thing here is I think it wouldn't shock me if we're already off base here or disagree on number 2. I don't know. We'll see. But I went with Jaylon Johnson, cornerback. He actually graded out 3rd amongst returning defensive starters from last season, but I am also putting in there my projections for him and how I think he's going to continue to get better. I think he is the second best player on the defense right now. Have high expectations for him as long as he's all in and fits this defense, and I think it is a good fit. Then I have Jaylon Johnson number 2.
All right, so we're going to mix it up right here. And number 2 for me, I have Robert Quinn as my number 2 player. Again, what he did last season with the sacks, that's great. But we also talked about he's in a defense that does cater more to his strengths. So not saying he's going to get that number again, especially given his age. And like we talked about, usually with Robert Quinn, he fluctuates in terms of that sack production. But it's hard to disregard what he did last season and what he can potentially do if he's on this team come the 2022 season. So I got Robert Quinn as number 2.
Well, we have some agreement here. Is it with Adam? Is it with Nick? I have Robert Quinn as well. I'm leaning with Nick. Nick, he said it's hard to, look past that record-breaking sack total last year, the 18.5 sacks, and I'm right there with you. Can't discredit that whatsoever. I know he's a streaky player. He hasn't put together back-to-back double-digit sack numbers since 2013, 2014. However, when you look at what he was able to accomplish, what you just mentioned about what potentially could be a better fit defensively, maybe this is a time for him to do it once more. So as of right now, Robert Quinn is the second best player, but there are some players behind him chomping at the bit that we're going to get to in a moment.
Well, and that's where I had Robert Quinn at number 3. So, right there in the same conversation. But I just can't completely dismiss 2 seasons ago. I mean, if we had done this time last year, I'm serious. Would he
in the top 10?
He wouldn't be in the top 10.
Nope.
So, I think at some point we need to average out the 2 years, maybe side a little bit more towards last year because he is a guy who's had a really good career, and 2020 was, his worst season, and he's had some up and down seasons. I think that the way I looked at this is we also can't expect him to have 18.5 sacks again. So if he might not even be on the team, one.
Yeah.
But if he is around and he does play a full season, what's realistic? 8, 9, 10 sacks. I think you'd hope he gets to double digits. And in that world, I'm trying to picture what that season would be for the Bears. I'm thinking Jaylon Johnson should have a better year than that from his position. So that's why I ranked these the way I did 1 through 3 with Jaylon Johnson ahead of Robert Quinn.
And I have Jaylon Johnson as my 3rd player here, Adam. For me, he's been a very good player to start off his career. You just need to see those turnover types of plays, right? He got the one against Joe Burrow. But in this defense, too, a lot like Robert Quinn, should give him more opportunities to, one, react and not think about what's kind of going on and just play instinctively. So if there is a time for Jaylon Johnson to get those turnover-type plays up, it's going to be this season in the first year with Matt Eberflus. But Jaylon Johnson's been a solid player. He's shadowing the number 1 wide receivers, taking on that task and flipping sides. So the Bears are fortunate to have a guy like him, and that's why I have him here at number 3.
All right, great minds continue to think alike, Nick. Jaylon Johnson is my 3rd player on this list. And I actually did an exercise that you did yesterday about, is Jaylon Johnson a better corner than, so-and-so at all the different positions? And I kept coming back to yes. And I came out with my preview on Jaylon Johnson today at allchgo.com. That is unlocked for everybody if you want to give it a look. And Nick, you did have a good bit of feedback about him having to shadow a number 1. And he admitted during OTAs in May that did kind of hold him back from taking more risks. But now that he's not going to be asked to do that, presumably Kyler Gordon are going to hold down opposite sides of the field, kind of like the Bears did with Fuller and Amukamara, as well as Fuller and Jaylon Johnson during his rookie season. I expect that to help him a lot. So a better position to succeed, a better scheme fit overall. I expect a good jump from Jaylon Johnson, who is still only 23 years old heading into his 3rd NFL season. So a lot to tap into still with him.
All right, moving on to number 4. I have Travis Gibson here. I think that, first of all, this is kind of an eye-opening spot. Start to look down the list, and that's where, there's it surprised me that Travis Gibson, it just surprised myself that Travis Gibson was this high, but when you really look at who's coming up next on this list, I think it's the right call. And I really wonder, how many people around the NFL even realize that he had 7 sacks and 5 forced fumbles last year.
Not a lot.
I mean, for a guy who wasn't necessarily playing starters reps, he made the most of those reps, and he's still young. He's going through another positional switch, but I think he's going to be able to handle it, and I think he's a legitimate defensive end that could really surprise a lot of people and get a little bit more recognition this year if he goes into that full-time starter role.
Okay, I like that, Adam. I'm actually going with Eddie Jackson as number 4 here on my list. A lot of what we were saying with the potential in this defense for Jaylon Johnson, I also see the same for Eddie Jackson, who has not been the same player that he was in 2018, no doubt. Hasn't had an interception in the past 2 seasons, which has been eye-opening for a lot of Bears fans who are, I think, a little upset with Eddie Jackson in his play, but he did go down on the percentage on missed tackles last season. He's been close, though, you guys. He really has been close to taking the ball away there. He had that nice forced fumble in the Cincinnati game where they're just getting turnovers the entire game. But Eddie Jackson, I still look at what he did in the past. He does have a couple, those 2 last years where it hasn't been great. But I think this defense can be a rejuvenation kind of year for an Eddie Jackson. So I have him here as number 4.
Wow. I have to use the preface yet again that like we made these lists independently and submitted them privately, but Eddie Jackson is number 4 for me as well. Nick, you hit on a lot of the same talking points that I wanted to hit on. How I looked at it was the 2018 Eddie Jackson, I feel like he has to be in there somewhere. Like he hasn't gone completely away, but just for some reason we haven't seen him. Hopefully with this new defense and having to buy into the hits philosophy that we're going to get to see an Eddie Jackson that somewhat resembles what we saw a few years ago. And if so, he is a top 5 player on this defense. We saw a little bit of an uptick last year, as Nick mentioned, with the improved tackling. I thought there were still some issues with some effort on some key situations, but that's not going to be allowed like it was in the past. So I'm doing a little bit of a projecting, a little bit of reminiscing to get Eddie Jackson up to number 4.
I think we're forgetting how long ago 2018 really was.
Did that year happen? Seems like it was a better time.
That was a while ago. Number 5 is not Eddie Jackson for me. It is Angelo Blackson.
Oh, wow.
Which is what I started to hint at the top of the show. Like, I think this exercise the last couple of days has brought me down on the Bears a little bit. I did not expect Angelo Blackson to be this high. But, you know, I go back to my grading system. The whole reason I do it is so I don't forget how guys played, and I really track what they're doing throughout a season. This was a guy who played at a starter level last year for the Bears. In my mind, the way it came out, Eddie Jackson did not. I do agree that I have some hope for Eddie in this defense. I do think the hits philosophy can help get more out of him. But when I go back to, it's been like 3 years since we've really seen that guy. 4 years now. I can't tell you for certainty that it's going to happen. And I think Angelo Blackson, while he's not going to be a dominant player, can still be, you know, solid one technique in his defense, give you valuable reps. And so that's why I have him number 5.
So I think it's interesting with this exercise too, how we weigh maybe potential versus like past achievements in a way too, because again, like Angelo Blackson, like last year was his year, his kind of coming out party. And he's on my list somewhere, but it's interesting how we're kind of going about this. My 5th guy is Travis Gibson, who, you know, Adam already talked about here, but I think he was able to have that productive season, the 7 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, only playing 352 snaps on the left side, 285 on the right, where showing some a little bit of flexibility, but he wasn't a full-time starter. And now that he's most likely going to get that opportunity this season, I'm really curious to see what Travis Gibson can do with that. I think he has all the intangibles to become a player that the Bears can rely on. This is going to be the season to prove it, but I have Travis Gibson here at number 5.
Dun, dun, dun. Travis Gibson, number 5 for Mr. DeWitt over here too. So we're rolling with identical top 5s here, Nick. You guys both touched on Travis Gibson. To me, if I had to put him in like some tangible terms to kind of even compare with yesterday, he's the Khalil Herbert of this defense. Small sample size last year, We want to see more out of him. But in the limited reps, he really showed out. Adam already mentioned the 5 forced fumbles. That's the second most of all edge players. He went from his first season of 5 tackles, and that was it, to a player with 7 sacks and nearly 40 tackles in year 2. He had the 10th best pass rush grade according to PFF among edge players. The grade was 87. I just can't wait to see what's next. Going back to a hand-in-the-dirt rusher, something he did back at Tulsa. I'm really excited to see how much more potential we can tap into in 2022.
Yeah, and before we continue our list here, I have to tell you about our next partnership, and it's one of my personal favorites with Owen, which stands for Only What You Need. This brand is a 100% plant-based protein company that gives you high quality and carefully selected ingredients to keep you functioning throughout your entire workday, and especially after an intense workout. In these protein shakes, you get your vegan omega-3s, your green superfoods like broccoli, kale, and spinach, and all these amazing ingredients reinforce what Owen stands for, only what you need. And what's cool is that I first heard about Owen from Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields, who does follow a plant-based diet. Owen and CHGO have partnered up to give you an awesome offer. When you use the code CHGO20, you get 20% off your first purchase at liveowen.com. Again, that is 20% off with the code CHGO20 at liveowen.com. So join us here at CHGO and Justin Fields and try Owen, only what you need.
And I ask it every time I'm on the show, it seems like, but if you're not a member of CHGO yet and you've been joining our family, like, what really are you waiting for? There's just so much that, benefits behind it, whether it's our premium written content like Adam's mailbag that he dropped here today for our members, joining the CHGO, Lounge, which is our Discord app that you can hop on, talk to other Bears fans, or really any other rooms for any of the Chicago teams that we cover. It's a place where we can hop in, get to talk to you as well. I really enjoy having some good conversations with our family members in there. You get some good discounts, weekly deals on our awesome merchandise, as we've already kind of highlighted earlier in the show. And everything that we like to do is for quality, has great content, and it's cheaper than Netflix per month. And again, you get to support local journalists like all 3 of us here, allowing us to do what we love. And for me, that is covering Chicago Bears football. So if you haven't yet, head over to allchgo.com, become a family member today. And I look forward to welcoming you in our Discord as soon as you arrive.
All right, we are halfway through ranking our top 10 players on defense. We get to number 6 now. After my controversial Angelo Blackson pick, I went with Eddie Jackson here at number 6, so 2 spots lower than you guys have them, Will and Nick. I got to be honest, I almost put him at number 7. Ooh. There was some debate there, which we'll talk about when we reveal number 7, but I am going with Eddie Jackson here. I still think he's a good, solid player. I think a lot of teams around the league would still want a safety like Eddie Jackson. And like I've said, you guys said, I think I can see a bounce back year happening. I don't think it'll be 2018, but I think it can be better. I think he can get back in that starter range in terms of how he's playing. And when you look at the rest of the roster, I think this is the fair place to put him right now.
All right, number 6 for me, I'm going with Justin Jones, the Bears 3 tech. And being signed to a 2-year, $12 million contract, he wasn't the Bears' first option, as we all know, but he did have a career year in terms of tackles, sacks, tackles for loss last season with the Chargers, and he did that in 11 games, and that's where also the knock comes on him, health. So he needs to show that he can be healthy and be up for this task, and we've heard so many times this offseason, whether it's from Alan Williams, the defense coordinator, Eberflus, how important the 3 tech is. We have to see if Justin Jones can amount to that and be that guy that is a disruptor, but I have him here as number 6.
Oh, thank God. All right, things are finally getting a little different between Nick and myself. At number 6, I have, Nicholas Morrow, the new linebacker coming over from the Raiders. He's a very solid linebacker who's really made some plays throughout his time in his career, whether it's making tackles behind the line of scrimmage, similar to Roquan Smith, taking down quarterbacks, coming in off blitzes, finding the football, coming away with those takeaways, or just making the plays on the ball in coverage. He's a very effective player and a very multifaceted linebacker that should thrive in this Bears defense alongside of Roquan Smith. He's proven he can be a good player in this league, and I expect that to continue. The only downside, the knock, and the reason why I'm hesitant here is the last time he actually played was 2020. That ankle injury kept him on the shelf all of last season. So I'm wondering, like, does he still have it? Like, it seems like OTAs and everything like that, like the Bears are talking him up. We just have to wait and see, but I'm banking and projecting a little bit here with Morrow, as well as looking at what he did before that injury. And if he's 100% healthy and can get back to form, he should be one of the better players in this unit.
All right, for number 7, for me, this is where I tap into the rookies. I'm going with Jaquan Brisker. And the reason why I was tempted to actually put him ahead of Eddie Jackson is because it would not surprise me if by week 4 we're already saying he's the best safety on the team. Now, he hasn't done that yet. We need to see that happen. I don't think it would be fair for me to say right now that he's better than Eddie Jackson. Couldn't really base that on anything. But I am very high on Jaquan Brisker. I think he's at a very good offseason program, jumping in right away, getting thrown in there with the starters, staying out there every day, getting his hands on the football regularly. Seems like almost every practice he's making a play. Nothing but good signs early on. I always talk about first impressions with rookies. I count them a little bit more when training camp starts. But to this point, very good first impressions. I expect those to continue when camp starts in a couple weeks. So I have him all the way up at number 7 on my list.
All right, Adam, I like it. Number 7, I have Nicholas Morrow, who Will just talked about. Big thing with him, 2020 was that good season. He played under Rod Marinelli, who was the interim defense coordinator that year. It's going to be a similar type of defense with the Bears this year. Need to see if he can still be that productive linebacker alongside Roquan Smith, but he comes in at number 7 on my list.
All right, I'll see Adams' Jaquan Brisker, and I'll raise him a Kyler Gordon here at number 7. So we'll start with these rookies just in an inverse order. With Gordon, obviously this is a wait and see in terms of like just how big of an impact he's going to make right away. Rookie cornerbacks in this league tend to have, their moments in which they really do struggle, but sometimes too they can shine. Remember Kyle Fuller almost a decade ago. It's crazy to even say that right now. But when I look at Gordon, he's someone that should immediately be one of the top 10 players in this defense right away. He's an athletic corner. We see the athleticism. I remember the clip the Bears shared on social media of that vertical of him going up and get the ball. Like, oh my word. Talk about Derrick Rose earlier. That vertical right there I saw from Gordon was very reminiscent. He can also play very physically. I'm excited to watch him kind of press up in this zone defense and see what he has in store. But I see a lot of potential in Gordon. I know we haven't seen him on the field as much as we like so far in OTAs, but come training camp, I expect him to really turn some heads. So number 7 for me is Kyler Gordon.
Yeah, I have him at number 8. And really just the reason I have Brisker ahead of him is because we've seen more Brisker. Kyler Gordon, when he's been out there in flashes, has looked the part. Mm-hmm. He's been exciting too, just like you said, Will. But he hasn't been out there as much, and he spent more time on a bike, it seemed like, in OTAs than actually out on the field. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But, give him another chance and the pads go on when camp starts. Hopefully he can stay out there more. But that is why I have Brisker ahead of Kyler Gordon right now.
Okay, I have Alquandine Muhammad as my 8th best player on this Bears defense, a 2-year, $10 million contract, but a guy that had 48 total tackles last season at Eberflus's defense and was a productive run stuffer, which the Bears are going to need if Robert Quinn is not a part of this team, and is going to be also somebody that's competing with Travis Gibson at that left side end for reps this season. But I think in this defense that he obviously has familiarity with, he could still be a solid player for the Bears. But I look at him and just having that ability to stop the run will be valuable for this Bears defense. So number 8, Alquandine Muhammad.
I like it, Nick. Let's see. Number 8 for me, I'm going to go with the rookies yet again. So Adam, I did fully an inverse here, and I have Jaquan Brisker, the self-proclaimed steal of the draft. You already mentioned that strong, really good start to OTAs. He's mentioned takeaways are in his DNA. The Bears are preaching him. It's like a match made in heaven. He did a lot of the same things at Penn State that the Bears are going to want him to do here. Another physical player that I see him being stout in the box, but he's also not a slouch in coverage. Player that really relies on his strong instincts. He's going to be a factor against the run, underneath routes, and he can also help over the top. And his presence is a big reason why I hope and I projected Eddie Jackson higher on this list, because he's having a counterpart. He's having that partner in the back end of this defense that has more potential than we've seen really since Adrian Amos. So Jaquan Brisker at number 8 is going to be my guy.
I'm just noticing that it looks like Nick liked Ryan Poles' free agent class, ranking these guys 6, 7, and 8. Justin Jones, Nicholas Morrow, and Al-Quadi Muhammad.
I didn't notice that until just now, Adam, but thank you for pointing it out. Yep, I clearly liked it.
Evidently, I like the draft class a little bit more than the free agents. I do finally dip into the free agent pool here, I should say, at number 9, and I went with Justin Jones. Almost didn't have him on the list, honestly. There was a moment where I had Kairos Tonga on here. And then, I kind of compared the two, and I'm like, okay, well, Tonga did give the Bears good reps. Justin Jones did a little bit more last year. We're talking about a guy that only has 4.5 career sacks. And you're really banking on the fact that 3 of them came last year, and you're hoping that that's what translates. But call me skeptical here. I need to see it. Even if he does stay healthy, need to see a little bit more consistency. Got to see more production. So he cracks the list here at number 9. But at the same time, I have some concerns about that. And that's where I start to worry about some of the depth on this defense, quite frankly, when you're looking at somebody who projects as a clear starter right now as the 3 technique. And I'm not feeling great about him at number 9.
All right, my number 9 is Angelo Blackson. Again, a guy who had a really solid year for the Bears last season. Now we just got to see if he can take on more of that starter reps, because it looks like given the lack of depth that the Bears have in the interior defensive line, he is going to be that guy. So Angelo Blackson, a lot of the same reasons that Adam was saying earlier, comes in at number 9 on my list, but he had a decent season for the Bears. Let's see how we can build off of that.
All right, are you guys strapped in, ready to go? Because this is where it gets weird.
Ooh, it's getting weird.
THC.
Jesper Horsted?
No. All right, number 9 is my third safety on this list. I'm going with DeAndre Houston Carson, DHC. I thought he deserved the spot here. He played in over half the defensive snaps last year, and I thought he still played admirably, really good in coverage. He makes plays on the ball. He limits plays in his direction. He's always DeAndre on the spot. The 2 fumble recoveries plus the interception last year. He's a very solid player. I don't think he should be starting in this defense, especially after Brisker's arrival, but he's a really good DB that they can throw in the field in sub packages, and he's proven he'll be around the football and make something happen. So for me, DeAndre Houston Carson is number 9, and I know things got a little weird here, but all in all, I thought he is still one of the better players, and I think it's a statement of itself when you look at the rest of that roster.
I mean, he'd probably be number 2 on my special teams rankings.
Behind Cairo.
Hey, if you like PFF grades, which again, take them with all the grains of salt that you want, he is the highest graded player that had at least 300 snaps last year on this defense with a 78. Thomas Graham Jr. is ahead of him, but again, only 112 snaps last year. Too small.
He's the highest graded player on the Bears or in the NFL?
Yeah, Bears.
Okay.
Higher than Khalil Mack, higher than Akeem Hicks. No, I appreciate it. Thomas Graham Jr., though, is one of the best in the corners in the whole league.
Roquan Smith, though, he's way down in PFF standards, though.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Which again, that's exactly why you don't use them. I like to just say them, and then people can, if they like them, great, and if they hate them, I understand too.
So Thomas Graham Jr., you mentioned that name. Number 10 on my list. I'm going to call myself out, though, here.
Yeah.
I definitely snubbed Nicholas Morrow, I think.
He did? Wow, what the hell?
But here's the thing. He didn't play last year. I haven't seen a lot of him. He was in the AFC.
We haven't seen a lot of Thomas Graham.
But I saw more Thomas Graham Jr. last year than I saw Nicholas Morrow. Sure. I like him. I see potential there. I liked what we saw in a small sample size. Obviously, PFF did too in a small sample size, as Will just mentioned. I think with more opportunity, he's going to be the slot corner, and I think the Bears are going to be better off there than they have been in the last couple of years. So, again, this is probably more of a potential pick here to slide him in the top 10, but it's a little bit of a leap of faith. I'm willing to do it. and that's why I have him at number 10.
Okay. I have one of the rookies making it. It's Kyler Gordon as the 10th best player right now. And I think I have a lot of confidence that Kyler Gordon's going to be a really good player in this Bears defense. I think when I went about my list, I just looked at what some of these guys did a year ago, or if it was, for like Nicholas Morrow's sake, it had to be 2 years ago. But Kyler Gordon, by the end of this year, easily can crack the top 5 in terms of what he's capable of doing with his athleticism. And if he can just grasp this Bears defense, he's definitely a quality player. But I have him at number 10 here.
So for my final spot, I was debating between Thomas Graham Jr. I was looking at Tavon Young, just couldn't the slot guy be there? I just don't know just yet. With you, Adam, I've been a big fan of Thomas Graham Jr. I've been very vocal about that. But I needed to throw Justin Jones on this list somewhere, for the love of God. He is going to be the 3 tech in this defense. You guys kind of hit on some of those numbers earlier. Career high 3 sacks and 5 tackles for loss last year. I know it's only 11 games, but that's still a number that somewhat underwhelms me for a guy that's going to be playing a position in this defense where success is predicated on making plays in the backfield. So for me, I know there's some upside that the Bears are kind of looking to tap into, and I hope it's there. I just want to see it before I have more confidence to kind of move him up this list. So that's why he kind of rounds out my list right now at number 10. So that's it for me.
So no Angelo Blackson on your list.
I know. I felt that's DeAndre Houston Carson would have probably been the one to remove if I was going to throw on Angelo Blackson. I've been high on Angelo since he came last year. Really showed out in the preseason. Was very solid last year for the Bears. And yeah, I guess he just didn't make the cut. I just wanted to show DHC a little bit of love here.
Yeah. Evidently.
Yeah.
Evidently. He's on the list. He's here. I think Brisker's warranted on this list.
Hey, no Alquan Muhammad, though. He had 6 sacks last season, 17 or 13 quarterback hits. He's going to be playing defensive end, too. There's reason to squeeze him on this list like I did, but I did not think it would be this different, to be completely.
I know. There's a lot more disagreement
Yeah.
on this list than we had yesterday, for sure.
Yesterday was just a struggle. This is actually, placing guys and seeing where they could go, weighing their previous history, their potential. So this was, again, another interesting exercise.
Yeah, it makes me worried,
Totally
too.
agreed. Yeah, and I like that some people like my DHC pick in there as well. Again, I think he's very good. He's solid. He's not, we've seen his potential. He's not going to get much better. However, it's been fine. When he's out there, you're not, mad or upset or just worried about what he's going to be doing out there. It's just that you hope there's better on this team at a starting role.
We have Kevin Fishbane in the chat here.
Yeah, Kevin Fishbane, our friend, is asking, when are you doing the episode with Hoge's top 10 personal protectors, which is so specific. I think we need to even explain that position because it's on the punt team, which DHC is the PP.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. He's the one who actually handles the snap count and calls for the snap and then stands in between the line and the punter. He's the punter's personal protector. Maybe I'll do my top 10 of all time and release it as a special episode only for Kevin Fishbane to listen to. I'll just text it to him.
There you go. Voice recording.
Love you, Fish. All right. Good stuff last couple days. You guys are breaking top 10 special teams rankings tomorrow, right?
No.
Is that
Friday?
it?
No?
No.
Just checking.
To disappoint.
Don't call me if you do it. I will be playing way too much golf this weekend.
Sounds like fun.
Might
Enjoy.
even just turn the phone off. Or put on airplane mode because I still got to play some music,
There you go.
Get the
That's a
right
good
vibes
idea.
going on the course. Very excited about it. I am taking some time off the next week and a half, charging up for training camp. Looking forward to it. Going to spend time with the family, get on the golf course, come back strong. And that's how it usually works, right? Sort of dreading camp right now. By the time I take some time off,
You'll be ready.
be excited for it because there's those first couple of days of camp are always fun. I will say, way more fun in Bourbonnais than they are in Lake Forest. The only part of training camp in Bourbonnais I miss are those first 4 or 5 days. That first chunk of days where it was a getaway and it was fun and it felt like camp. And then the first time you drove back to Chicago and then back down, you're like, okay, I'm done with this. Can we just do the rest? So, if they ever want to go back to Bourbonnais for just the first 5 days camp, fine. I do think it's better for the team the way they're doing it in Lake Forest.
Yeah.
I think it's I don't know, depends on where you live in terms of the fan benefit, but
Use that state-of-the-art facility. I mean, if you're the Bears, that's the
you
big
build
benefit.
it, you got to use it. Is the bottom line, and I get it. But who's that? You want to tease it on the show tomorrow?
We're still working things out.
Okay.
But we, just tune in. The rest of this week, next week, we'll have guests lined up, but you just have to tune in each day at 1 p.m. Central Time to see who that is.
Well, these guys will hold down the fort while I'm gone. Will, great job last couple days with these rankings. Appreciate you. Make sure everyone's following us on Twitter. Follow CHGO_sports_Bears. Get those memberships, our content, some good stuff up there today at allchgo.com. Nick is back tomorrow with a mystery guest at 1 p.m. Talk to you then.